This is CBC Here and Now.
DFO surveillance video captures two men lowering a net into a salmon river.
Two men face poaching charges. One pleads guilty. Charges against a second man are dismissed.
Nursing shortage. Their union says it's a crisis that's hurting patient care.
You have to reduce the surgeries you're doing, you have to reduce diagnostics, and people are being left in the periphery.
Coming up on Here and Now.
After a little bit of a cool down, we're going to see some warmer temperatures as we head towards the weekend.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Peter Cowan. We start with some good news about vaccinations. The province is moving up second doses. So starting on Monday, anyone who's had a dose scheduled for after August 6th will have it automatically canceled and they can rebook for a sooner dose. In just the next couple of weeks, the province is receiving 183,000 doses of vaccine. That's enough for 40% of the population to get a shot. Right now, just 6% of the population has had that second dose and is fully vaccinated. We're doing a whole lot better on first doses. We've now reached 72%, and that's getting awfully close to that 75% milestone. We're expected to reach that sometime this week. That's going to trigger the Phase 1 opening, which allows things like travelers from the rest of the country. Even though we've reached that early, the province isn't moving up that step 1 of reopening.
Targeted date for reopening will still be July 1st. There is a significant amount of work required to prepare for reopening the province to travelers. And while many families are busy getting their homes and guest rooms ready for relatives to return, we too have much work to do behind the scenes. In particular, staff are working on creating a new technology platform for travelers to submit proof of vaccination and pre-arrival tests.
The plan is to open to other Atlantic provinces a week today. People won't need vaccination in order to come here. Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says it's safe because the Maritimes have seen fairly low cases. But it's also good news across the country, which is a good sign for the plans to reopen further.
We continue to see steady and significant declines in new COVID cases across the country. And there are less than 1,000 new cases being reported daily in Canada, which is tremendous progress. All indications are that the third wave is subsiding, and this reduces the risk for everyone. And we certainly see the impacts of this with only 3 travel-related cases in the last week.
So with all these changes, lots of questions like how exactly is this whole rebooking process going to work, and why can't the provinces all agree on a common set of rules for the Atlantic bubble? I'll take more of your COVID questions a little later in the show.
Most of today was gray for eastern portions of the island today. Cool as well this morning, but over the last couple of hours we started to see those temperatures bump up. Let's take a look at those daytime highs across the board. About 16 degrees now, finally, in St. John's, but temperatures for the most part across the island were a little cool today, 13 to 16 degrees. And then those temperatures into the single digits for northern portions of Labrador today, 5 to 6 degrees for you in Nain. Now, as far as that humidity goes, we certainly noticed a big jump in the humidity over the last couple of hours. Currently feels like 21 in St. John's, and that's thanks to that southerly flow that we talked about yesterday with the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Bill earlier today. That area of low pressure just to the west of Newfoundland and Labrador took that, and we're starting to see that warmer flow move in. So that will be the story as we head through the next couple of days, but I'll get into all those details when I come back.
It's salmon season once again, and thousands of anglers are heading to the rivers to test their luck. And the rules are strict. You have to fish with a fly rod, and the fly has to have a barb that's pinched. The species is under stress. You're only allowed to keep 2 fish per season. Any other technique and you can end up in front of a judge. This video was captured on a hidden camera last August. It shows 2 men unfolding and lowering a net. Law enforcement officers set up motion detection cameras here because it's a pool where salmon are known to stop to rest. No fishing of any kind is allowed on this river. And it's not just video. DFO cameras also captured still photographs. DFO officers charged 2 men. The man on the right is Gord Clark from Corner Brook. He works in the construction industry. In March, Clark pleaded guilty to netting a salmon river, and he received a $2,200 fine and can't own a salmon angling license for 2 years. DFO also charged Dr. Justin French, who they claimed was the man on the left. French pleaded not guilty. He's a successful, high-profile eye surgeon in Corner Brook. French is one of the highest-paid doctors in the province. He's been a public champion for people in need of cataract and other eye surgery procedures, and French is finishing the building of a new big clinic, one of Corner Brook's major construction projects. So 2 men charged at the same time, but 2 very different outcomes. This is where Justin French's trial was held back in April. All told, it lasted about 5 hours. And questions were raised about SD cards inside the surveillance cameras. The original SD cards were destroyed. Well, CBC News has learned that there were witnesses who were expected to testify, people who had told DFO officers the identity of the man in this picture. But 3 weeks after the trial started, the Crown decided to end the matter. The charges against French were dismissed. In a statement to Here and Now, the head of prosecutions in the province says, after a review of the evidence and, quote, given our expectations from recognition witnesses, it was determined there was no reasonable prospect of conviction. Speaking on behalf of Justin French, his lawyer, Robbie Ash, sent this statement to Here and Now. It was immediately apparent to me when I reviewed the disclosure that a charge should not have been laid against Dr. French. So, who is this unidentified poacher? Authorities have no other suspects. And one person who must know the answer is Gord Clark. He admitted his guilt and paid the fine, but never identified his accomplice, the man holding the other end of this net. Now, later on Here and Now, we're going to take a deeper look at why salmon poaching still happens in our province. We're going to consider some solutions to combat it and get some tips on what you can do if you come across any nets or poaching activity this summer.
Well, a day after Suncor's self-imposed deadline has passed, the fate of the Terra Nova oil field remains unknown. But as the unease continues over one oil field, there's growing hope for another. Terry Roberts joins us live now to explain. So first of all, Terry, give us the latest that you know about Terra Nova.
Yeah, Peter, well, still, the suspense is mounting. We still don't have an answer from Suncor about the fate of the Terra Nova oil field, but we did get some indication today of how a decision might be revealed to the public. Suncor did acknowledge that they will not release a decision like this during hours when the stock market is in business. So if there is a decision today, for example, we won't know about it here in Newfoundland and Labrador until sometime between 7 o'clock this evening and perhaps 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, but that's all speculation right now. It could be overnight tonight, it could be any day this week. We really don't know, but there's one point I want to return to, and that's the possibility that the province might be on the hook for a lot of money here, and that's this royalty return clause. If the companies decide to decommission the Terra Nova oil field, and we're hearing the estimates for that could cost anywhere from $500 million to $1.5 billion to decommission the oil field. And it's possible, Energy Minister Andrew Parsons was saying yesterday in the House of Assembly and telling reporters that the province might be on the hook for about $150 million in what's called royalty paybacks to the oil companies. Well, today we learned a little bit more about that, and that number could be as high as $350 million that the province would have to pay back to the oil companies if decommissioning is the outcome of this situation with the Terra Nova.
Okay, Terry, so what's this about a possible new development in the offshore?
Yeah, so at the same time now, we all know about Equinor is a big player in our offshore. It's a partner in the Terra Nova. It announced today that it's going to pull out of the Terra Nova, but it's also working on a very big project of its own. We know it as Bay du Nord. It's located at 500 kilometers offshore in very deep water. It's a series of 6 big discoveries that Equinor has made out there, and there's 2 more big prospects they're going to drill next year. So Equinor held its Investors Day yesterday, and it spoke to its investors, and it identified 15 key projects on its list of developments, and we learned that Bay du Nord is on that list, one of those lists, and they're even saying that Bay du Nord could be larger than Equinor's flagship Bacalhau project in Brazil, which is said to have 1 billion barrels of oil.
We're still some way from FID, but already we've drilled 13 wells in this area, giving us real confidence in the subsurface and in the reserves. And we see the potential for even more upside with 2 new wells in 2022 on the Sitka and Cambriol Central prospects. Successful exploration here can add to a high-value development, which already has peak production of 200,000 barrels per day and a break-even of less than $35 per barrel. Baie du Nord has the potential to become bigger than Bacalhau. So as one flagship sets sail in Brazil, the next is in the Canadian shipyard.
So another sign right there of the ups and downs in the oil industry. As we await the fate of the Terra Nova oil field, on the other hand, there's an industry now poised to perhaps celebrate the sanctioning of another development in our offshore. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Terry Roberts in St. John's.
Thank you, Terry. Well, to healthcare news, the Nurses Union says a province-wide staffing shortage is getting worse and it's harming patient care. The health minister says steps are being taken to address the problem, but the union says the government isn't acknowledging the depth of the crisis. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
The health minister agrees nurse staffing is a chronic problem with no simple solution.
There really is no magic bullet. Some of it's an issue of distribution as well. From a numbers point of view, physicians and nurses, we actually are blessed in terms of numbers per capita.
But the president of the province's nurses union isn't satisfied with that answer. She feels the minister is downplaying the depth of the crisis.
I'm disappointed that Minister Haggie did not acknowledge the nursing shortage. You know, we can let the facts speak for themselves. We have between 40 and 50 vacancies in long-term care here in St. John's, which Eastern Health has verified in their media. We have at least 13 vacancies in St. Anthony, which equates to a 16% vacancy rate. Overall, Grenfell has a 40% vacancy rate.
Haggie says the problem isn't making it impossible to deliver services to patients.
We haven't got to that kind of situation. I think our challenges have been some chronic issues around recruitment, and we've been working with the RNU about strategies to deal with that.
People are being left in the periphery.
Coffey disagrees. She says the nursing shortage is clearly affecting patient care.
So one example of that is St. Anthony had an agreement that they could send their critical patients into the health science if they reduce their beds from 4 down to 2 in their intensive care unit. They haven't been able to do that because there's no capacity at the health science. So the nursing shortage, the long-term care impact is having a provincial impact on services.
Coffey said addressing the nursing shortage makes financial sense at a time when the province is trying to reduce spending. She said from March 2019 to March 2020, the province paid nurses for more than 300,000 hours of overtime.
Everything is going to cost money, but there's also the cost of the physical and mental exhaustion on the members who are working in the system every day.
Coffey says the shortage is burning nurses out. She says 2 more resigned in Labrador this week. She says it's not about holiday requests or COVID-19, and she's calling on political and healthcare leaders to find long-term solutions now. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, with the province just a week away from the new Atlantic bubble and a couple weeks from reopening to Canada, some tourism operators say they're strapped for staff. The opposition raised those red flags today, saying if the province isn't ready to welcome Canadian tourists, those tourists may pick another destination. Here now's Jeremy Eden explains.
It's no secret those in tourism and hospitality are among the hardest hit by the pandemic. Today, the PC's tourism critic raised comments made by the head of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador.
Brenda O'Reilly says in the Telegram, a big obstacle is finding workers. As we discussed, our marketing campaigns and ads are encouraging people to come explore our province. However, if businesses cannot find staff, their doors will either remain closed or the experience will be less than expected.
The province's tourism push has been years in the making. Colorful, well-narrated ads are everywhere. Tourism Minister Steve Crocker says it's an important industry here, one that has grown a lot in recent years.
We had a lot of great people in this industry, and I think we'll get them back. But what happened, the interruption for these people, which this industry was, I guess one of the first ones drastically affected, and unfortunately be one of the last ones coming out of the pandemic to actually get its feet back under it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The province says it has a plan to help. A 3-pillar plan, according to the Minister of Immigration, Population Growth and Skills. Invest $230 million to train locals, work with the feds to identify those looking for work, and to boost immigration numbers.
Once we get them back and get these jobs stabilized and get the industry stabilized, I think the people that enjoy this important work will come back, and we'll help train more to come into the industry, because it is somewhere that we need to be going.
But this plan will be able to do very little to fix the problem in the next 2 weeks, meaning the image being sold might not be the one visitors get when they arrive. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
This weather update is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. It's time to explore the great wide open. Plan your trip at yourbackyardbeckons.ca.
Well, time to check in with Ashley, and I have to tell you, Ashley was out on an interview today, and the windsocky things that we use, it was all kind of limp and soggy and disgusting because of the drizzly whatever that was. Not as nice as it could have been.
Nope, certainly not. It wasn't very nice earlier today. Certainly we saw lots of periods of rain, some drizzle, mostly for eastern areas of the Avalon and then the south as well. Conception Bay North, for example, didn't really see anything this afternoon. But temperatures, if you've been out in the last couple of hours or so, have certainly jumped up. It's feeling much nicer now, but we're not done with the rain just yet. Let's take a look at those temperatures across the board as our daytime highs around 16 degrees today so far in St. John's. We just reached that temperature. And otherwise, temperatures in the teens for the rest of the province, or at least the rest of the island. Still seeing those single-digit highs, though, for the northern portion of Labrador. And that's where you're sitting right now. And don't expect these temperatures to move too much as we head through the evening hours tonight. We're pretty much going to see a few degree drop, but other than that, it will be pretty steady as to where we're sitting right now. So that area of low pressure just to the west of Newfoundland and Labrador, we're seeing some periods of rain move through, a little bit of drizzle as well. And that will generally be the story as we head through the overnight tonight. Now this moisture, I talked about this yesterday, this moisture is actually streaming in from the Gulf of Mexico. And that is what we saw with the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Bill. And that will move off as we head through the day tomorrow, but we're going to keep this humidity a little bit through the afternoon. By Friday, looks like we'll be out of that moisture for sure. And as far as the rain goes, like I said, we're not really done with it. We'll see some periods of rain tonight for the majority of the province, maybe a little bit heavy at times for some areas. Could pick up another 5+ millimeters, certainly 5 to 10 for western portions of Labrador as we get into the early morning hours on Thursday. But temperatures tonight, like I said, 14 to 15 degrees. The winds generally light in the west, but those southwesterlies will stay around 20 to 30 kilometers per hour the further east you go. And then for Labrador, temperatures between 8 to 9 degrees for the most part, and then 4 to 5 for the north and west. Your winds will be the strongest in the west with northeasterlies anywhere from 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. So tomorrow, the rain will generally be the story for most of Labrador. And then it'll stay gray to start, at least for the island. A few lingering showers as well, but we should see some clearing skies as we head through the afternoon. Certainly for the southwest, and then that will continue to progress eastward as we head through the afternoon. We'll likely see some lingering cloud cover for eastern areas, the Avalon, and then as we head into the late afternoon, that's when we should see some clearing skies. Don't be surprised if you see a few showers as well through the afternoon for central and western areas as well. And then as we head into the evening hours, a better chance that western areas of the island will see some more showers. But overnight, or rather afternoon temperatures tomorrow will still be pretty nice. We're going to see 19 to 22 degrees. Now, areas along the southwest or southern portion of the Avalon will likely see some cooler temperatures. The further inland you go, you should reach 19, 20 degrees through the day. And then again, that humidity will stick around through the afternoon. Just a little bit of humidity, making these temperatures feel a little bit warmer. As we head towards central, 22 to 24 degrees is your afternoon highs. Maybe a few cloudy periods, like I said, with that chance of a few showers, but overall it'll be a pretty lovely day. A little cooler along the south coast, but again, further inland, you should see some warmer temperatures. For the northern peninsula, later on in the day is when you'll see that clearing sky. Showers to start for St. Anthony, 13 degrees. And then unfortunately, a generally gray day will be the story for most of Labrador. Your temperature's about 11 to 12 degrees, a little cooler for the north coast, and it looks like these gray skies will generally stick around as we head through the next couple of days, maybe a little bit of clearing skies as we get to the weekend, but I'll get into all of those details when I'm back in a little bit.
Well, the Atlantic bubble is open and vaccinations are moving up, and it's time to answer some of your COVID questions. Now, Peter, maybe you can walk us through how the rebooking is going for people to work for people's shots.
I know, this is a big topic, Anthony. In the briefing today, they announced that officially as of Monday, anyone who had an appointment for August 6th or later, it's going to be canceled, and you're going to rebook for an earlier time. That's because they're getting even more vaccine than expected. We have been giving out about 5,000 shots a day. We're going to get enough vaccine over the next 2 weeks to give out almost triple that, 13,000 shots a day. There is one key thing when you're rebooking, and that is it has to be 8 weeks from your first shot. So in fact, you can go online now and rebook, and in fact, many people were doing it this afternoon, so many that it crashed the system, and they had to bring in a timer to give you kind of a 5-minute cool down period before they'd let you in. But they haven't added all the appointments yet. So for example, when I looked in St. John's, the latest appointment you could get was July 18th, which means if you got your first shot after May 23rd, or any later than that, you can't book because you need to be 8 weeks away. So if you had your shot fairly early, you can go online and try now, but if you don't see an appointment time, wait until Monday. That's officially when they're going to launch it and when they're going to have way more appointments available, and should make life a little easier.
All right, some good advice there and details. Now, we've seen progress on the Atlantic bubble, but one question that I know we've had a lot of is, why can't the provinces agree on just one plan, right? We have this kind of tiny bubbles, 4 provinces, different dates, different requirements. What's going on?
Yeah, I'll admit, even I find it a bit confusing, and I follow this for a living. So let's just break down exactly who's doing what. So Nova Scotia is the easiest. They're going to open to Atlantic provinces on the 23rd, same day as we will. The rules are the same. Anyone can come in, whether they've got 1 dose, 2 doses, no doses. New Brunswick, they're the most aggressive Atlantic province to reopen. They're moving to phase 2 at midnight tonight. That's 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So New Brunswick will welcome anyone from Canada as long as they have a first dose of vaccine. But if you're going there from here, you won't be able to come back without isolation until we open up in another week. And PEI, they're the most conservative of all the Atlantic bubble members. June 27th for all Atlantic Canadians, and you have to have at least 1 shot of vaccine. So my advice, if you're traveling, check the government website for where you're going to be visiting. Last time everyone had the same rules. I asked the health minister today why they couldn't do that this time around. Here was his answer.
Variations in local epidemiology made it that the advice from their respective medical officers of health meant that they would do things in a slightly different phase, but pretty well everybody would be lined up by July. This was the approach that we were advised would work for us, and that's why we're outlining our arrangements today.
Now, a lot of people are booking travel for Canada Day, July 1st, Memorial Day. Now, that's when fully vaccinated people won't need to isolate from anywhere in Canada, right? So what happens if they arrive, say, a day or 2 before that?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of nervous people that already have trips, or, there are some flights that arrive just 5 minutes before the borders open. So until then, the existing rules apply, which means you can't get in if you're a tourist. You're still going to need an exemption. But if you are able to come in and you're in isolation, they're going to try to find a way to spring you loose on July 1st along with everyone else who's arriving, rather than being stuck with the full 2 weeks of quarantine, even if you just arrived a day or 2 earlier. They aren't sure exactly, though, how this is going to work.
Our goal is that it will be similar to the Atlantic bubble, and that the rules at July 1st that apply to you would apply to you. So if someone was fully vaccinated, they would be able to leave their isolation. However, it is going to require a little bit of time for us to work through how that exactly can happen, and so we'll have more information about that as we get closer to the reopening date.
And just a reminder, on July 1st, the plan is it's no isolation if you've been fully vaccinated, which means 2 weeks after your second shot. If you have just a single dose, you're going to need a negative test. And for people without any vaccination, it's still the full 14 days of isolation.
All right, so much changing all the time. Thanks for staying on top of this, Peter.
My pleasure.
A lot of these people are not terrible people. It's tradition. The fish that they're not taking out of the river, they're taking from their neighbor who can only take 1 fish. He's taking 30.
Salmon netting and the mindset of poachers. Why does robbing from nature remain popular in this province? Stick around. Welcome back to Here Now. We're going to follow up on our major story this evening about salmon poaching in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a problem every year, and joining me now to talk about the effects and some possible solutions to the problem is John McCarthy. He is with Spawn. So, John, we see the stories every year, such as what we've reported on tonight. I know first you want to make a comment.
Our group will respond to the general terms of poaching, but not to any specific case.
Fair enough. Here we are, small rivers, lots of rivers like this in the province. What happens when someone nets a river like this?
Illegal netting, we believe, and a lot of groups like us believe, is the biggest negative effect on our salmon rivers in Newfoundland and Labrador. We believe that the numbers are bigger than retained fishery and the hook and release fishery combined.
Right, so for people who don't understand angling terms, you mean for all of the people who are out there fishing,
legally.
Yeah, you think netting takes more?
Absolutely, absolutely more.
That'd be a lot of fish.
That is a lot of fish. And the sad thing about it, Anthony, is what it does is it takes away from the honest fishermen. The West Coast especially has a lot of retention anglers, and that's their choice. And a lot of these guys go out on the river, and now this year on the smaller rivers, they're only allowed one fish. If you could prevent this loss by illegal netting, I believe it would, in short terms, DFO management would have a hard job explaining why the retention levels on those systems didn't go up.
Okay, so retention and retaining fish has to do with the angling. Now, just in terms of the actual life of a salmon river, what's the impact of netting on the salmon?
Well, I mean, on a river that's small, you have some rivers that are classified, but they're not open. There are less than 200 fish running there. So when the water gets low and when the water temperatures go up in late July and August, I mean, you don't have to be very experienced at netting to drag a pool and take 50 or 60 fish at a time. If you got 7 or 8 people doing that, you can destroy a small system. And if you're on a level class 2 river, which is somewhere around 1,000 fish, I mean, you take 200 or 300 fish out of that, you're basically taking a fish off of every retention angler on that system.
We've done so many stories about this kind of thing on Here and Now, and every year DFO, will show us nets that they've seized, and we talk about why this is damaging and against the law, and yet certain parts of the province have a reputation for poaching still being almost a popular activity. Why is this still happening?
Well, it's not happening to feed their family. I can guarantee that. Not in 2021. Maybe 50, 60 years ago that was the case. I believe some people do it because they feel entitled and they feel that the rules don't apply to them. I think some people do it for a thrill, but I think the majority do it because it's tradition. Their father and their uncle taught them how to net the river, and their grandfather, their father taught them. And they don't see anything wrong with it. And a lot of these people are not terrible people, but it's tradition. And they don't realize the impact that they're having on that system. And the fish that they're not taking out of the river, they're taking from their neighbor who can only take one fish. He's taking 30. So, it's a little selfish endeavor in our opinion.
Well, let me wind down the interview by asking you this, because we do like to sort of take a look at possible solutions. I mean, what could be done? Different jurisdictions do things slightly differently than we do. What do you think, and what does Spawn, your organization, believe could happen to address this problem?
Well, first of all, the fines in Newfoundland are among the lowest in Canada. You've got our neighbor Nova Scotia, which substantially higher fines. You've got Alberta, BC, the same thing. We believe that anybody who violates the Wildlife Act or the Fisheries Act, it crosses over. If you're going to be netting river, you're probably going to be poaching moose. You're probably going to be taking too many rabbits or setting snares out of season. So we think if legislation was put in place that there was no choice by the courts, this is legislation, that if you were caught netting a river, you would lose all your outdoor privileges for 5 years.
So no moose hunting, no snaring?
No,
right
trout
across the
catching
board.
Right across the board. And these guys are ardent outdoorsmen. And I believe that would be a much bigger deterrent than $5,000.
Right. All right, John McCarthy, appreciate your insights into this. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so those are John McCarthy's thoughts from Spawn. What about you? If you're walking in a nice place like this, or some river that you like to frequent during the summer, a salmon river, and you see a net, or maybe you even see some people netting that river, what should you do? Well, I have a DFO law enforcement officer who has something to tell you.
Thanks, Anthony. If anyone in the public comes across any illegal activity when they're in our inland waters, specifically netting, they should remove themselves from the situation immediately. They can contact Crime Stoppers or our Direct Conservation and Protection line. They can also contact DFO, Detachment Office of Fishery Officers in their area, or we also have the province with Inland Wildlife and Fishery.
Looking at the national COVID situation now, Canada's top doctor says the country may have to vaccinate more people against COVID-19 than originally thought. That's in order for us to lift the most restrictive health measures. Variants of concern are the main reason, specifically the Delta variant. One expert agrees with Tam's assessment.
Those aspirational targets of 75% single vaccinated, 20% double vaccinated, for us to start opening up again based on the models, may need to change because the virus has changed. The virus, when something is more infectious, more transmissible, you need higher numbers for herd immunity. And the other piece is that we know with this Delta variant, single vaccination is not as effective. So when you put those two things together, we want even higher numbers for that margin of safety.
Canada has reached a critical milestone in the fight against COVID-19. More than 30 million doses of vaccine have now been given out in this country, but we still have a long way to go. About 14% of Canadians are fully vaccinated.
Lots of people making plans for the weekend. I know I'm thinking about some salmon rivers to try and explore. And so nobody's more important to me right now than Ashley Brawweiler. Hey, Ashley.
Hi, how's it going?
Excellent. So what am I in for?
So, what are you in for? That's a great question. It's actually looking pretty nice for the majority of the island as we head towards the weekend. A little bit unsettled though, or at least those unsettled conditions are going to continue for the majority of Labrador. Let's take a look at the future tracker just to time that out for you. Showers certainly going to be the story through Friday, and those gray skies will stick around for you across the Big Land. And a fairly nice day on Friday for the island. Now, Saturday morning, a little bit of an area of low pressure just to the south, or at least to the south. Might keep a little bit of cloud cover through the day on Saturday, at least through the morning hours, and then we'll likely see some clearing skies, and then the chance of a few showers will move in Saturday night into Sunday morning. So overall, not a bad weekend, but it is looking like at times we could see some unsettled conditions. But those gray skies and chance of showers will continue for the most part for most of Labrador. And that's just thanks to that area of low pressure that is going to move in and then stay unsettled through the day on Monday. Temperatures, however, looking beautiful. We should see 20 to 25 degrees from the Avalon through to West Coast. A little cooler for the Southwest again. Temperatures around 15 degrees for Port aux Basques, and then similar 14 to 18 degrees for the Northern Peninsula and along the Strait. And then for Labrador, like I said, those gray skies sticking around for the west and the north. Temperatures bumping up to the teens for Lab City at 17 degrees, and then 22 degrees for Happy Valley Goose Bay, with a mix of sun and cloud through the afternoon. And then as we head into Saturday, that's when I'm going to keep that chance of showers in for the Avalon. Overall, not a bad day, but there is still the chance we'll see a few showers. 22 degrees, but look at what happens through Central, 25 to 27 degrees. We're going to see a little bit of a return of that humidity as well. Saturday night into Sunday, certainly into Monday, it looks like. And then for Corner Brook, 25 degrees again, and nothing but sunshine. And then unsettled conditions for Labrador. But again, a few peaks of sun, so that's certainly nice for the weekend. For St. John's and Eastern Newfoundland, as we get through Sunday and Monday, keeping things a little bit unsettled, but temperatures between 17 to 20 degrees. And then we're going to say goodbye to those single-digit overnight lows. We're back up into the double digits right across the board. Central Newfoundland, no different. A little bit gray on Sunday, same thing for Monday, but back into the 25-degree range. We should stay in the 20s for most of Western Newfoundland as well. Look at that weekend. Saturday, Sunday, sunshine, maybe a mix of sun and cloud for Sunday. And then for Eastern Labrador, some showers both Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday, you're back into the sun and cloud. Same thing for the west. Wanted to share this photo talking about some clouds. Spectacular sunrise over Port Saunders. Thank you to Jean Ann for that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Great picture. Thanks, Ashley. Oh, the MP for Nunavut will not be seeking re-election. Mumalak Kakak delivered a powerful goodbye message to the House of Commons, and in her address yesterday, she says she has never felt safe and that she doesn't belong to an institution that's built on the backs and trauma of Indigenous people. Now, you might recognize the young Nunavut MP. Earlier in the spring, Kakak took to social media to question Labrador MP Yvonne Jones's ancestry as an Inuk. She later apologized for how she handled that situation, but she did continue to question the legitimacy of Nunatuavut. The new Democrat MP, who is Inuk, said she has been the victim of racial profiling during her time in Ottawa. Olivia Stefanovich has more on what unfolded in the Commons last night.
It has been an honor serving my constituents.
These speeches are usually a chance for departing MPs to fondly reminisce about their time in the House of Commons.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
But New Democrat MP Mumalak Kakak used her opportunity to deliver a scathing message.
I have never felt safe or protected in my position, especially within the House of Commons.
Kakak says entering the doors of power put her in survival mode, requiring moments to compose herself in the elevator or in the washroom.
I've had security jog after me down hallways, nearly put their hands on me, and racial profile me.
Kakak says she learned to keep her parliamentary badge close so she could quickly prove who she is.
People like me don't belong here in the federal institution. Even if we're told we should run, we still face huge barriers.
Her party's leader is calling for institutional change.
we need to be very vigilant and continue to apply pressure on the House of Commons and Parliament to become a more welcoming space.
For someone to feel unsafe in what should be one of the most secure places in the country because of who she is and what her identity is entirely unacceptable.
Kakak leaves feeling disappointed by a lack of progress on the housing and suicide crises facing Inuit. She calls her choice very personal, and she's not ruling out a future run for the NDP.
I showed youth and Indigenous people that we can be in places, even if we don't feel that they're made for us.
And at age 27, she says there are many paths she's considering to continue her fight for change. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
And another farewell speech delivered a little closer to home, but also a very different tone. MP Jack Harris has also said his goodbyes in the House of Commons, telling parliamentarians that politics is noble work. He announced last week that he is stepping down once the next election is called. In his speech yesterday, he talked about some remarks made to him at the start of his lengthy political career, something that stayed with him all these years.
I could tell one little story, but when I ran first in 1987, the seat I ran in was St. John's East, had not been a no-do Democrat since Confederation, that 1948, that is. And hardly any Liberals either. Maybe once or twice back in the 60s, there was a Liberal elected, I think twice. So I was running for office. I'd offered myself for the nomination. I was practicing law at the time. I went to see a judge to sign some papers. And this was a judge who had served provincially. And he said to me, "Well, Mr. Harris, I hear you're going into politics." If it could be said that running for the NDP was going into politics. And I sort of was supposed to laugh because it was supposed to be a joke. But then he spent the next 45 minutes telling me what a great honor it was to be a politician, a noble calling, he called it, to be able to play a role in making the laws that govern your people. And he talked about his experiences with Joey Smallwood, et cetera, et cetera. And I never forgot that phrase because I believe that the following, I mean, he wasn't right about the question of whether I was going into politics, although I never believed that I would have the kind of career that I did with 10 years in the federal parliament and 16 years provincially. But I never forgot that phrase, that this was a noble calling, that you're here to serve your people, that you have a role to play, and that it's an important one, and that it's a big honor to do that.
And congratulations, Mr. Harris. Not an easy job, no matter what your political stripe is. All the best to you and your family. Well, Gull Island isn't just the next proposed hydro project on the Churchill River. It's also a sacred Innu gathering ground.
Rain Hart has been going there since he was a kid. Leading up to National Indigenous Peoples Day, we've been sharing videos from the Labrador Friendship Centre and the Shield Project. Here's Rain on why Gull Island is so important to him.
My name is Rain Hart. I'm 16 years of age, here in my home in Happy Valley Goose Bay. And 45 minutes down the road is a place called Gull Island, where we have our annual Innu gathering in places from Sheshatshiu, Quebec, Natwashish, all over, different types of Innu. We set up our tents and our wood stoves, and also my family and I go down there and we all have a fun time. So the big main thing that we get away from are these things. There's no service, so that's why we communicate more. That's garbage in Gull Island. And it's fun to help and communicate with all your friends and family, which is a big part of why I love Gull Island. Yeah. Some of the fun things that we like to do is have fun watching our elders playing these traditional drums that they do. It's really interesting and important to see our elders do some things that they keep the history going with their songs, just playing the drum. For me to be there and to witness everything like this with my elders, it's really heartwarming to see how they still keep all this amazing things in such a wonderful time of the year, with all my friends, family, and mostly the elders too, as they're really important to all of us. This is a picture of me in kindergarten, dressed up in my traditional clothing. Feels like time flies when you're having fun, eh? We used to dress up like this years ago in Gull Island, and we still do it now to this day. We do some round dances up on the stage, having a friendly little competition to see who could win the best dress in its age group. And I've been going to Gull Island ever since I was a little baby. I couldn't even be able to walk. I'd just be in a little hammock on the side of the tent, you know, rocking back and forth to the wood stove heat. And I'm still going there to this day, which means a lot to me because that has a lot of history behind it. I was there for many years. And for me to keep on going, I'm hopefully making my elders and my parents happy and leading me to get some fresh ink because I'm Innu and I'm proud to be. It's a lot of love and positivity all spread around Gull Island. You'll barely ever see any negative thoughts about it or negativity in general. A lot of positive vibes and a lot of fun times and a lot of amazing memories there in Gull Island.
Welcome back. Well, this May, Canada's inflation rate hit its highest level in a decade, and it's the second month in a row that this has happened.
Prices for everything from food to fuel are on the rise, but economists say the numbers may be misleading. Here's the CBC's Jacqueline Hansen.
From houses to furniture and the material to build both, the costs of some popular pandemic purchases have gone up, according to new data from Statistics Canada. But that's no surprise to some prospective homebuyers.
I've never seen these kinds of prices for houses in my area that I've lived and grew up in.
The price of vehicles also went up, driven partly by a global shortage of semiconductor chips. That's resulted in fewer cars on the market.
The thing with the prices is they will only go so far because customers won't be willing to pay. If my supply is too expensive, nobody's going to buy it.
In May, inflation hit its highest level in 10 years, 3.6%. But that comes with a caution.
Prices look elevated compared to where they were a year ago, but that's because prices a year ago were rock bottom levels as in the throes of the first wave of COVID.
Take the price of gasoline. Compared to May of 2020, it jumped more than 40%. But that's because demand and prices were cratering this time last year.
Canadians are going to find a few things a little denting to their pocketbook, but we've also come off a year where we weren't spending that much of our income. So there's a lot of purchasing power out there in the hands of the average Canadian.
If inflation continues to rise even after Canada's economy fully reopens, the Bank of Canada could step in and raise interest rates to cool things down.
If we're going to have a real inflation problem, one that's more persistent, it's going to be a story that emerges next year.
For some people who have been priced out of the housing market during the pandemic, the waiting game is also on.
When we get to a calmer period where we can actually negotiate real prices and real conditions, that's what I'm hoping for.
Just some of the unknowns ahead for Canada's post-COVID economic recovery. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Yeah, and a 2x4 going price right now is still a kidney. Just before we end things, Peter, can I take advantage of my staff position and ask you a COVID question?
Absolutely.
I was listening tonight and I was thinking, so right now, given New Brunswick being aggressive, as you put it, if I get on a plane from Calgary, Montreal, and land in Moncton and decide I just want to come to St. John's or Corner Brook, what's to stop me? I mean,
Right, so once the bubble opens next week, one of the key things is it's only open to Atlantic Canadians. So they're going to ask you for ID when you enter the province, and you've got to prove that you actually live in the Atlantic bubble, not just that you're visiting there. So that's going to be one of the things. And the other thing is the key question that they're going to ask is, have you traveled outside of the Atlantic region in the last 14 days? So even if someone from New Brunswick goes on a trip to Ontario and they come back, they better have been back for 14 days before they'll be allowed into Newfoundland and Labrador.
Okay.
But a lot of different rules, and if you're planning a trip, I do recommend visit the province that you're visiting, go to their website, look at their rules, because they're changing almost on a daily basis.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Have a good night, everyone.